Today on our 2009 Ford F-150, we're going to take a look at and also show you how to install the Airlift ride control air helper springs for the rear axle. Part number is AL59544. Now this is the common problem most people have when they're looking into airbags. Too much rear vehicle squat. We've got our water tank loaded up here just to simulate either pin weight or tongue weight or even a load in the back of your truck. And what's happening is the back of the truck gets pressed down. Now the main effects that you're going to have on your vehicle with this situation is going to be excess wear and tear on that rear suspension and also a rougher ride. When our truck squats, we have a lot less suspension travels, so the likelihood of frame to axle contact is pretty real. As a side effect, the front end of the truck also comes up. The weight is not evenly distributed anymore, distributed as it should be, so as the back of the truck goes down, the front of the truck comes up. Now in the front of the truck, with that weight not being down on our tires, that reduces our handling and our stability. We're not going to have nearly as good braking when we turn. Our tires aren't going to have as much pressure down making contact. Also, with that weight coming off, the steering geometry changes, and typically you'll see excess tire wear. The headlight beams are also going to be on an angle that's unnatural. They're going to be angled up slightly, so it decreases our visibility as we head down the road. All right, now with our load back in our truck and our airbags installed, we're just going to provide air pressure in. That's going to level out the vehicle, getting it back to that factory ride height we had earlier. Just check it with a tape measure, and when we hit the right spot, we'll be ready to hit the road. Now we can really see what a difference those airbags make. We've got the same load in the same vehicle, and we're right back at factory ride height. It's taken about 60 PSI to get us there out of the 100 PSI operating range, and it's really ideal. We've taken a lot of that stress and strain off these rear leaf springs. We're now putting that on those airbags. That's going to help this last a lot longer. The front end's right back down where it should be. That's returning the steering geometry to where it needs to be. Also puts that weight back down, so the handling, braking characteristics, they're all going to be returned to where they were. Now, when you don't have a load in the vehicle, the handling of the truck is going to improve slightly. As a byproduct, if you look through the customer reviews, there's a lot of people that say they really like the way their truck rides and handles. People have noticed when they're hauling, let's say like a fifth wheel camper with airbags on the vehicle, it reduces the amount of jarring that happens inside of the camper, so all your stuff's going to stay safer. The airbag system is going to help to reduce that shock and jarring that goes back, because we don't have that axle to frame contact through that Jounce bumper anymore. Now we can head inside. We'll take a look at a few more features that the airbags have to offer. They're going to offer up to 2,000 pounds of support, but we do want to keep in mind we don't take what our truck's rated for and add 2,000 pounds to that. The airbags are designed to take the brunt of the force off of your suspension system, making it last longer, not increasing the carrying capacity of your vehicle. Although we can get up to the upper ends of the vehicle's safe load limit and do it safely without all that squat and that loss of steering feel. We have dual inflation valves. This is going to allow for left and right leveling. When you have off-centered loads in the back of your truck, or if you've got an Embed style camper with a water tank on one side, that's going to give you left and right sag, and that's where we'll be able to use these to inflate one side maybe a little bit more than the other to get everything leveled back out and handling correctly. Now the airbag kit's a really straightforward system to install. We've got custom brackets that are designed to work with the vehicle frame, so we don't have to worry about cutting, drilling, or really anything like that. The bottom bracket's the same way. It just uses U-bolts to go around the leaf spring. Now the brackets are nice heavy-duty steel material. They're going to have a black powder coat finish on them, so those are going to last for a very long time, just like our airbags. Now these helper springs designed for the Ford F-150 are for the light to standard use items. These are going to give us great support as we travel down the road. Now with airbags, as compared to when we drove the vehicle without airbags, the ride is much more smooth now. You don't feel the weight transfer side to side so much when you're turning, and you really have better feel behind the wheel. You can feel that you're getting the weight down on the front tires, and it doesn't feel as light. As we take the bumps or as we turn side to side, you're going to see it compress and retract, really smoothing out the suspension travel. Especially on the bumps, you're going to notice the Jounce bumper was located much more closely to the axle and was much more likely to make contact. That increases the rough ride feel. With the airbag, you'll see there's much more distance between that bumper and the axle. That's improved suspension travel, which again leads to a smoother ride for us. Now, without the load in the truck, this is going to be what's the factory ride height, or the ride height the truck is at its natural position. So let's measure these, write down these measurements, because that's going to be our goal for after our airbag installation. We're at 39 1/8 and 37 1/8. The first thing we're going to do is get the Jounce bumper removed. This is designed to make contact with the axle before the frame of the vehicle, so you don't have metal on metal contact. We're going to use a 13mm socket and a short extension to remove the bolt located up inside that goes to the frame. All right, so that's out. We'll set these aside. Now we're going to replace the Jounce bumper bolt with the provided bolt. It's an M10, and it also is going to have a lock washer you'll want to put on. Now there's going to be two different bolts, one with a little bit coarser thread like we've got here, one with a little more fine thread. If you lay the bolts on top of each other, if they're the right bolt, or if it's a match, the thread should lay right down inside of each other, just like that. No air gaps or anything. If it's wrong, it's going to look more like that, where there's going to be kind of a space and you won't be able to get them to lay into each other. We're going to grab two of the hook bolts here. We're going to place one in each of the elongated holes that are in our frame, and you'll want to grab the appropriate bracket. L is going to be for the driver's side. They're both stamped, so you get the right one on the right side. L is driver, R is passenger. Let's bring this up, and we want to align the U-bolts with the two holes that are in that bracket. Then onto each one, we'll thread on one of the flange nuts. And these we'll leave loosely installed for now. All right, now we can head underneath and we'll take care of the other attachment point. Now on the Jounce bumper we removed, it's going to have two pins. Those are alignment pins that stick up and just keep it from rotating. We're going to need to take those off, whether it be by grinding, using a high-speed cutoff wheel. We'll just want to get those trimmed down flush, so when it goes up against our bracket, it sits flat. Now we're just going to use a little black spray paint. Going to hit the end of that to cover up that bare metal. And we're going to bring our bolt up through the Jounce stop. Realign our bracket with that factory hole, and then run it up there hand tight. Now if we kind of push in on our bracket, we'll be able to tighten down our bolts. Now we're going to tighten our Jounce bumper bolt back down. And we'll also move to these and torque that down to the specifications listed in our instructions. We'll want to tighten these both down evenly, of course. All right, now there is a note in the instructions also to cut this forward bolt off flush with the nut, just to make sure we have clearance. All right, that takes care of the upper bracket installation for the driver's side here. We're going to go repeat that exact same process for the passenger side. Now to prepare our airbag to go in, we'll want to add the elbow fitting right into the top. You see that's just going to thread in. Then with a 1/2-inch wrench, once that comes to a stop, we want to go a turn and then 2 turns. Just like that. That'll get that thread sealing tape well down inside. Now we'll grab the lower portion of our bracket. You can see that's going to sit right there. It lines up with that hole. Then we'll have the larger diameter bolts a little bit shorter that we'll thread in the bottom, along with that flat washer. Well, this we need to leave loose, not overly loose, but so we can still move it in and out on that bracket. Now this is going to be outside, so this side of the bracket we want facing outward. Now that elbow is going to go right up through the bracket, Then there's a serrated lock washer that's going to slide down and over. And then we've got our nylon nut. Now this is something we're going to run down, but we also want it to stay loose so we can make our final adjustments. Now securing our lower brackets, we're going to have U-bolts. These will come down around the leaf spring and up through that bracket on each side. Now on top of each one of those, we're going to place a flat washer. We've also got a nylon lock nut that's going to go on each side. We're going to do the exact same thing for the front as well. All right, now we can start tightening those down. Now you'll notice at a certain point, the threads become so long that even a deep well socket isn't going to get down on there. So once we have them all down to this point in the back and on the front, I'm going to cut the U-bolts off, and that's going to give us plenty of room to torque them down properly. All right, now we can start running our airlines. Now the airline's going to come connected. We'll have a fitting on each end. This is where we'll provide the air for the bags. What we want to do is just split this right in about half here. Doesn't have to be exact, but you want it pretty close. You want to use a tubing cutter or a very sharp razor knife. You have to have really precise cuts to be sure that these seal. We're using an Airlift tubing cutter. This is part number AL10530. So that's just going to give you a nice clean cut there. And we're going to start running them towards our airbags. You'll want to decide on where you're going to mount the inflation valves. Now some of the recommended areas for installation would be on either side of your license plate, or you can put them above and below one another if you choose. Some people like to put them in the fuel filler door. I like to use the mounting studs for the license plate here and here. It's going to give it a clean look, and you really don't have to modify too much. We'll just enlarge the holes here slightly and they'll come right through there and they'll look pretty nice. I'm going to use a 5/16 inch bit, and we're going to get these enlarged slightly here. Now onto the airline, you're going to thread one of the nuts pretty much all the way down and place on a serrated lock washer. We can bring that through, put our plate back on, and as you can see, it will work with any kind of decorative plate frame. The studs are good and long. We've got that rubber washer we're going to place on, and a flat washer. Another nut there. We get the other side done, then we can tighten them down, and we can adjust that nut on the back in or out for the depth we want that to stick out. And now I just use a 13mm socket and just kind of hand tighten them. Don't need to overdo it. Just like that. And we can put our caps on each side. And we can run each line up to the bags. As we run forward, we just want to follow along with any of the factory wire looms or anything you can find. Make sure your airline goes in a safe area. You don't want it to get crushed or pinched or anything. And you can use some of the provided zip ties to secure it. You may need to have a few extra on hand just to make sure you get everything tidied up the way you want it. Now as we run this toward our airbag, you want to be very careful not to drag the tubing over any sharp edges, because it will definitely cause leaks when you try to plug it in your airbag. I'm going to create a loop right in this area, zip tie it up just so if we ever need any extra airline, we'll have it. Bring it up to our airbag, we'll get it trimmed off. And then we're going to push it into the elbow. You'll feel it click in nice and solid down there. I'm probably going to pull a little bit of slack out of it here, just to hold it down underneath that so it won't rub on that end. Now we'll go do the exact same thing for our other side. Now we're going to add about 10 pounds of air pressure into each bag. All right, now that we've got our pressure at 10 pounds, we're going to go underneath the vehicle, adjust our springs, and get them secured to the brackets, top and bottom. Now with the little pressure in our bags, you'll see that this one has a little bit of an off angle. So that's what we're adjusting right now. We need to come in, we need to start bringing that bag over and get it so that it's straight up and down. Now we can tighten up our bottom bolt, then we'll do the same thing for the top. We can tilt it forward and back to get it aligned and then tighten that one down. Now to get to our bottom bolt here, we'll need a 19mm or 3/4 inch Boxton wrench. We'll get that one secure, that'll lock in that base. Now let's look at the top. All right, now that looks level up and down. For this larger plastic bolt here, we're gonna need an 1 1/8" Boxton wrench. And remember, that's a nylon nut, so we don't need to tighten it down too much. Now we can go to the passenger side and make the same adjustments there. Now let's get our airbags up to about 30 pounds of pressure on each side. And we're gonna spray the system down and check for any leaks that we might have. Now with no leaks detected, you can return any parts that you removed for your installation. And that's gonna do it for part number AL59544, our Airlift ride control air helper springs for the rear axle on our 2009 Ford F-150.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.